And I will tell you, there is collusion with respect to that, because something has to be going on. And it seems to be, if they're conservative, if they're Republicans, if they're in a certain group, there's discrimination, and big discrimination. I see it absolutely on Twitter and Facebook, which I have also, and others. We have to do something about it.
Yep, there's the president yesterday saying there's collusion between social media censorship and fake news. And topic A for Eric Trump, executive vice president of the Trump Organization and the son of the president. Good morning to you.
It's good to be here. So the president had somebody they really related to in that Brazilian leader yesterday. He had a Portuguese-speaking Donald Trump. He's the Trump of the tropics.
Trump of the tropics.
And they both had the same sense about the news skewed against them.
Guys, there's no question about it. Look at Google. You had an executive that a couple days after the election up on stage talking to the other Google executives, crying, literally crying that Trump won the election. I mean, don't tell me there's no bias. You have Diamond and Silk, two of the nicest human beings in the world, right? They're getting kicked off of YouTube on a daily basis because, they post, funny but yet benign videos. And then you want to see some of the hate speech that I get toward me, and they do absolutely nothing about those individuals. I mean, it only goes one way. If you're on the left, you're totally protected. If you're on the right, they absolutely try and kill you. My father's social media director works in the White House. He got kicked off of Instagram yesterday. I mean, you can't
They apologized.
Yeah, it was a bot or an algorithm. They always have an excuse. What can people actually do?
You know what the fundamental problem is? The people within these companies, they are so much on the opposite side that even when it goes to a human to check, right? And you want to keep certain things off. Right? But when it goes to a human to check, they see something that they don't like. They see a message that they don't like. And that's why, I mean, it's happening to everybody, guys. It's happening to Charlie Kirk. It's happening
How do you fix it? How do you fix it?
I don't know.
Your brother was here saying the same thing 3 weeks ago because he was being censored.
I'd love to see this go to the Supreme Court, to tell you the truth. You know why? And I think Kevin McCarthy, I think there are a lot of people who actually want to do something about this. But, they hide under the veil that, well, we're private companies. We're private companies. But you know what? You're no longer a private company when you're a monopoly. When Facebook has 1.7, 1.8 billion users around the world, you're beyond a private company. You become a monopoly. And
utility.
Yeah. And by the way, and then you are governed by free speech. And the irony of the whole situation is you have everybody in the media, everybody in the Washington Post and New York Times, they stand behind free speech for whatever they want to do. As tragic as it often is, whatever they want to do.
Yeah.
Yet when conservatives are out there and they're getting censored by, big tech, they say absolutely nothing about it. And honestly, it's a disgrace.
Eric, I wish I could say it was just social media where this bias lies, but take a listen to what Ted Koppel had to say recently. I want to get your reaction.
We're talking about organizations that I believe have, in fact, decided as organizations that Donald J. Trump is bad for the United States. But the notion that most of us look upon Donald Trump as being an absolute fiasco, he's not mistaken in that perception, and he's not mistaken when so many of the liberal media, for example, describe themselves as belonging to the resistance.
Koppel, not a right-wing loyalist, but this is just a guy who's been in the industry for a long time, and like any sane person who has eyes and ears, he's saying, listen, this is an agenda-driven media now.
It absolutely is. Read the Washington Post on any given day. Read the New York Times on any given day. Watch Chris Cuomo or one of these guys on CNN any night. Right? Just the hatred. You can see hatred in people's eyes, and the hatred comes through, guys. And what the worst part about all of this? If it was confined to the U.S., right, it's one thing. But when you see some of these anchors on CNN, and it's being broadcast to the entire world, and every single night they're undermining, and they're
watching in Hong Kong, they're watching in China.
Spewing nonsense. It actually hurts our country. And it's one thing that no one ever talks about, but it hurts us as a nation when CNN, not so big in the U.S., or ratings are horrible in the U.S., a lot of people watch it overseas.
Yep.
Right? And they're spewing nonsense. It hurts this country, and it's fundamentally not fair, especially when you look at the job that my father's done. You look at the economy and where it is. Our country is on fire in terms of our economy. We've got the lowest unemployment we've ever had. Wages are...
And 71% of the people are happy with the economy. But, Eric, let me ask you something.
By the way, by CNN's own poll.
Yeah.
71% of people by CNN's own poll are happy with the economy.
So let me ask you a quick question. The New York Times does forensics on your organization and the president. Meanwhile, you're running the company, you and Don Jr. What do you think of that story that came out yesterday? Did you have a chance to read it, evaluate it?
Yeah.
And the linkage with Trump Organization and Deutsche Bank?
Listen, we have one of the great companies ever. We have incredibly low debt. We have some of the best hotels, the best golf courses. And, you know, every single day we get harassed as a company because it's their way to get to my father. And that's all it is. You see these 81 subpoenas. What are they trying to do? It's presidential harassment, right? They don't want the guy to do their job. They don't have any leadership. They don't have any message. You know, their star people, AOC, are totally faltering because they're almost crazy at this point. And so what do? They try and harass, and they try and disrupt, and they subpoena people, and they waste a lot of time. So, you know, instead of the House trying to fix education or fix our military or take care of our vets or do any one of 1,000 productive things that they could be doing, immigration, probably the most relevant thing right now, what do? You know, they bring a con man, a convicted felon, they parade him, they put him on TV for days and days and days. They waste so much time. It's an absolute disgrace.
I'm terribly concerned that when you talk about the New York Times these days, when you talk about the Washington Post these days, we're not talking about the New York Times of 50 years ago. We are not talking about the Washington Post of 50 years ago. We're talking about organizations that I believe have, in fact, decided as organizations that Donald J. Trump is bad for the United States.
Fox senior political analyst Britt Hume worked with Ted Koppel for many years and joins us tonight. Britt, I don't think of Ted Koppel as a conservative figure at all, but he just said something that I think many on the left will hate. Is it true, and why did he say it, do you think?
I think it's unmistakably true, Tucker, and you're right. I did work with Ted Koppel for many years. He's old school, much as I am. We come out of the same tradition, which is neutrality in news coverage, opinions reserved for columnists and editorial writers. And in broadcast journalism, you have certain commentators and you have correspondents who cover the news. And those lines of separation have become increasingly blurred. And in the age of Trump, as Koppel suggested, they've gone completely out the window because of a sense among journalists that the election of Donald Trump constituted a national emergency, and it was their duty as patriots to resist it and to do all they could to undo this presidency, which they have assiduously, in my judgment, tried to do, and we see it reflected constantly.
I suppose what I find so infuriating about it is how indirect and dishonest it is. I mean, opinion people are pretty straightforward about it. We are on this show. Rachel Maddow, I'm not mad at Rachel Maddow. She says exactly who she is. There's no misleading anybody about being an opinion person. Why shouldn't news people who decide to become activists just say so out loud?
Well, I agree with that, but I think what happened here is that Watergate really is a factor here, because in that moment, which was the most exciting, the most extraordinary moment in modern journalistic history in the United States, you know, these two young reporters that were seen as bringing down a president of the United States. You know, we'd all been told that the Fourth Estate was powerful and so forth, but none of us had ever seen anything like this. This was truly remarkable. It was glamorous. They were celebrated in movies. They were the subject of endless books and so on, and it was an extraordinary moment. And it created an atmosphere in which I think journalists want to relive that. And here comes a target even more unpopular than Richard Nixon was, in the person of Donald Trump, and they have gone about their business. And it is, and you know, back in those days, the Washington Post reporting on Watergate, which was so celebrated, was pretty darn solid.
I know.
But when Donald Trump gave his State of the Union address this year, the headline in the next day's Washington Post banner headline said, "A discordant appeal for unity." Now, that is an opinion. You didn't used to see that in headlines and the news pages of any newspapers, let alone the Washington Post. As Ted Koppel said, things have changed, and they have, and not for the better, in my judgment.
No, they're undermining their own currency, for sure.